I, 28 female, recently gave birth to my second child, a baby girl, 3 days ago at Central Memorial Hospital. My husband, 30 male, and I already have a wonderful 2-year-old son, and we've always been clear about our desire to have a larger family. The pregnancy itself was routine, and the delivery went smoothly. 8 hours of labor that ended with a healthy 7 pound 6 ounce baby girl. For some background context, my relationship with my in laws has generally been positive over the 6 years I've been married to their son. My mother in law can be somewhat overprotective of her children, but nothing that raised serious concerns until now. My sister in law, Lizzie, 32, female, has been dealing with infertility issues for about 5 years. She and her husband have undergone 3 rounds of IVF without success, and they're currently taking a break from treatments to reassess their options. Lizzie and I have maintained a cordial relationship throughout these years. While we're not exceptionally close, we respect each other and have never had any significant conflicts. I've always tried to be mindful of her situation when discussing my pregnancies. When we announced this second pregnancy, I made sure to tell her privately before sharing the news with the extended family, giving her time to process the information in her own way. The incident that prompted this post occurred yesterday during mother in law's visit to the hospital. The timing of her visit wasn't ideal. I was still quite tired from the delivery and had just finished a feeding session with the baby. My husband had stepped out to get coffee from the hospital cafe and pick up some items I needed from home. Mother in law arrived with a small gift bag containing a yellow onesie and some newborn diapers. After the typical congratulations and about 15 minutes of admiring the baby, she settled into the visitor's chair beside my bed. The conversation started normally enough with questions about the delivery, comments about how the baby resembled my husband as a newborn. However, the tone shifted when she began discussing family planning. She started by mentioning how blessed we were to have two healthy children, which I agreed with. Then she suggested that perhaps we should consider two children as our complete family. When I didn't immediately respond, she elaborated that it would be the fair thing to do, considering Lizzie's ongoing struggles with infertility. Her exact words were along the lines of, dear, maybe you should consider stopping at two children. It would be the fair thing to do considering Lizzie's situation. It's really affecting her to see you having kids so easily while she's struggling. She went on to explain how Lizzie allegedly gets upset whenever pregnancy or baby related topics come up in family gatherings and how she cries herself to sleep after hearing about successful pregnancies. I was taken aback by this suggestion, particularly since Lizzie had never indicated such feelings to me directly. In fact, she had seemed genuinely happy when we announced this pregnancy, even offering to help set up the nursery. During my first pregnancy, she had been equally supportive, though understandably maintaining some emotional distance. I maintained my composure and explained to mother in law that while I sympathize deeply with Lizzie's struggles, my husband and I's family planning decisions are personal choices that we'll make based on what works for our family. I also mentioned that Lizzie had never expressed such concerns to me directly. Mother in law's response was to suggest that Lizzie was too kind to say anything directly, and that as her mother, she felt obligated to speak up on her behalf. She then began listing various instances where Lizzie had allegedly been upset by pregnancy announcements or baby related events, though many of these situations seemed exaggerated or contrary to what I'd observed of Lizzie's behavior. When my husband returned with the coffee, mother-in-law quickly changed the subject to more general topics about the baby. She stayed for another 20 minutes before leaving, acting as if our previous conversation hadn't occurred. My husband noticed something was off with my mood after she left, but I waited until we were home to discuss it with him, wanting to maintain a peaceful environment in the hospital. That evening, after settling in at home with the baby, I couldn't stop thinking about mother-in-law's comments. While I understood her desire to protect her daughter's feelings, suggesting that someone should limit their family size to accommodate another person's emotions seemed inappropriate and overstepping. Moreover, the fact that these supposed feelings were being communicated through mother-in-law rather than Lizzie herself made me question the accuracy of the situation. After discussing it with my husband, who was equally concerned about his mother's comments, I decided to reach out to Lizzie directly. I composed a careful message explaining what mother-in-law had said and asking if she truly felt this way about our family planning choices. I wanted to address any potential issues openly and honestly, while also ensuring that Lizzie knew she could communicate such feelings to me directly if they existed. I sent the message hoping to either clear up any misunderstandings or address any real concerns Lizzie might have. What I didn't expect was the chain of events that would unfold from this simple attempt at honest communication. Edit. This post has blown up more than I expected. Thank you for all the supportive comments. I'll post an update soon as things have developed significantly. Update 1. I want to begin by thanking everyone who took the time to comment and send messages of support. The situation has developed significantly over the past few days, and I now have a clearer picture of the underlying dynamics at play in our family. After sending my message to Lizzie about mother-in-law's hospital visit comments, I received a phone call. The conversation that followed provided substantial insight into a pattern of behavior from mother-in-law that neither my husband nor I had fully recognized before. Lizzie explained that not only had she never expressed any wish for us to limit our family size, but she was also completely unaware that mother-in-law had been speaking on her behalf about her fertility struggles to various family members. Over the course of our 3-hour conversation, Lizzie shared numerous instances of mother-in-law's unauthorized advocacy that had been occurring without her knowledge. According to Lizzie, mother-in-law had been contacting family members individually about Lizzie's fertility journey without permission. She had made various requests to relatives, claiming they were necessary for Lizzie's emotional well-being. She asked cousins not to bring their children to family gatherings and requested that pregnancy announcements be delayed or delivered in specific ways. She suggested certain topics be avoided during family dinners and asked that baby-related photos not be shared in family group chats. She even intervened in party planning to ensure events weren't too child-centric. What made this situation particularly problematic was that Lizzie has actually been attending therapy sessions for the past year to develop healthy coping mechanisms for dealing with her infertility. Her therapist has been helping her work through her emotions in a constructive way, encouraging her to maintain normal relationships with family members who have children. Mother-in-law's interference, which Lizzie was largely unaware of, has been working contrary to this therapeutic approach. The day following our phone conversation, Lizzie arranged a meeting with mother-in-law at her house, requesting that my husband be present as a witness and support. I remained at home with our children, but my husband provided a detailed account of the conversation that took place. The meeting began with Lizzie presenting specific examples of mother-in-law's unauthorized interventions in family matters. She explained how these actions had affected her relationships with extended family members who had been treating her differently based on mother-in-law's requests. Lizzie showed screenshots of messages from relatives who had been avoiding discussing their children around her, believing she had requested this through mother-in-law. When confronted with this evidence, mother-in-law initially attempted to defend her actions as maternal concern. She explained that as a mother, she felt obligated to protect Lizzie from potentially upsetting situations. However, when Lizzie detailed how this protection had actually complicated her relationships and undermined her therapeutic progress, mother-in-law's response shifted. Rather than acknowledging the impact of her actions, mother-in-law suggested that Lizzie's perspective had been influenced by outside factors. She specifically referenced my message to Lizzie, suggesting that my postpartum hormones had created unnecessary drama and misunderstandings within the family. This deflection led to a broader discussion about mother-in-law's pattern of boundary violations. My husband took this opportunity to share his own experiences with mother-in-law's tendency to overstep boundaries. He reminded her of several incidents, including her attempt to move into our home after our first child's birth, despite our explicit request for privacy. He mentioned her repeated questioning of our parenting choices, her tendency to share personal information about family members with others without permission, and her habit of inserting herself into situations where her intervention wasn't requested. Lizzie then revealed how mother-in-law had been using social media to present herself as an advocate for infertility awareness, often sharing details about Lizzie's private medical journey without consent. She had been posting regular updates about being a mother supporting her daughter through infertility, complete with emotional descriptions of Lizzie's struggles, most of which were either exaggerated or completely fabricated. These posts had reached several of Lizzie's work colleagues and acquaintances who weren't aware of her fertility challenges, forcing her to have uncomfortable conversations she hadn't been prepared for. Mother-in-law had essentially been using Lizzie's personal medical situation to gain attention and sympathy from her social media followers. When presented with these concerns, mother-in-law's reaction was telling. She first denied any wrongdoing and then attempted to justify her actions as maternal care. This was followed by emotional displays intended to redirect focus to her feelings. Accusations that others were being ungrateful or cruel, and suggestions that any criticism of her behavior was due to misunderstandings or outside influence. The meeting concluded with Lizzie establishing clear boundaries regarding her personal information and fertility journey. She told mother-in-law to stop discussing her fertility challenges with anyone without explicit permission, remove all social media posts related to her infertility, and cease making special requests of family members on her behalf. She emphasized that her medical information was private and not for public consumption. Mother-in-law's immediate response was to leave the meeting, stating that she needed time to process being attacked by her children. Over the next 24 hours, she engaged in a series of actions that demonstrated her difficulty accepting these boundaries. She sent multiple text messages to both Lizzie and me, cycling through various approaches. Sometimes she would apologize for any misunderstandings and then defend her actions as necessary maternal care. She expressed hurt at being mischaracterized and suggested that the timing of this confrontation was inappropriate given any postpartum state. She repeatedly requested that we put this behind us without addressing the underlying issues. During this time, she also contacted several family members to share her version of events, presenting herself as a concerned mother being criticized for trying to help her children. However, these attempts to gather support were largely unsuccessful, as many family members were already aware of her pattern of boundary violations. Her social media activity during this period was equally telling. She made several indirect posts about the challenges of being a mother to adult children and the difficulty of watching your children push you away. She wrote about the importance of maternal intuition and protection, and even made veiled references to the effects of hormones on family dynamics. The family's response to these actions has been notably unified. Several relatives have reached out to both Lizzie and me to express support for our position and share their own experiences with mother in law's tendency to overstep boundaries. This includes family members who had previously accepted mother in law's intervention without questioning its validity. Currently, we're maintaining a united front regarding the established boundaries. My husband and Lizzie are in agreement that mother in law's behavior requires significant change if she wants to maintain close relationships with her children. We're working on supporting Lizzie in reclaiming control of her narrative regarding her fertility journey while maintaining clear and consistent boundaries with mother in law. We're also focused on correcting misunderstandings with extended family members and ensuring that my postpartum recovery and bonding time with the new baby remains peaceful and protected. My husband has taken primary responsibility for communicating with his mother during this period, allowing me to focus on recovery and baby care. He's maintaining a calm but firm stance regarding our expectations for future interactions. All communications with mother in law are being documented to maintain clarity about what has been communicated. I will post another update as the situation continues to develop. And for now, we're taking things day by day and remaining committed to maintaining healthy boundaries while leaving room for positive change if mother in law proves willing to acknowledge and modify her behavior. Update 2. Past few days have brought significant changes to our family dynamics, though the path to improvement has involved some additional challenges we needed to navigate. After my last update, the situation continued to evolve in ways that reveal deeper patterns in our family's communication and relationships. Mother in law's response to the confrontation about her boundary violations took an incredibly public turn. She began using social media as a platform to present her perspective on the situation, though she maintained plausible deniability by avoiding direct references to specific family members. Her first post was a lengthy status update about mothers who only want to protect their children being misunderstood in modern society. She wrote about how maternal instincts are often dismissed and how painful it is when children reject their mother's guidance and wisdom. This initial post was followed by a series of shared articles about postpartum depression and hormonal imbalances after childbirth. While she never directly mentioned me, the timing and context made it clear she was attempting to suggest that my reaction to her concerned advice was a result of mental health issues rather than a legitimate response to her inappropriate behavior. She also shared several posts about the importance of family unity and accepting maternal guidance, interspersed with vague comments about feeling unappreciated. Her social media campaign might have continued in this vein indefinitely had it not prompted an unexpected response from Lizzie. My sister in law, who has always maintained strict privacy regarding her fertility journey, decided that she needed to address the situation directly and reclaim control of her own narrative. Lizzie composed a thorough and measured social media post that addressed the ongoing situation with remarkable clarity and composure. She began by acknowledging her fertility struggles, something she had previously only discussed with close family and friends. She explained how she had been working with mental health professionals to develop healthy coping mechanisms and build resilience throughout her journey. Then she directly addressed a pattern of unauthorized advocacy that had been occurring without her knowledge or consent. In her post, Lizzie detailed how her mother had been using her infertility journey as a means of gaining attention and sympathy for herself. She described discovering that her private medical information had been shared with extended family members, friends, and even strangers through social media posts she hadn't known existed. She explained how her mother had been making requests and arrangements on her behalf, allegedly to protect her feelings, without ever consulting her about what she actually needed or wanted. Lizzie specifically addressed the recent incident involving my pregnancy, new baby, clearly stating that she had never asked anyone to limit their family size on her behalf. She emphasized that such requests were not only inappropriate but actively harmful to her therapeutic progress and her relationships with family members. She explained how learning about these behind the scenes manipulations had affected her trust in family relationships and her confidence in navigating social situations. The response to Lizzie's post was immediate and extensive. Other family members began sharing their own experiences with mother in law's boundary violations and manipulation tactics. Several cousins reached out privately at first and then publicly shared their own stories of how mother in law had influenced their behavior toward Lizzie without her knowledge. One cousin described how mother in law had insisted she delay her pregnancy announcement because Lizzie was too fragile to handle the news, resulting in awkward family gatherings where everyone except Lizzie knew about the pregnancy. Another cousin revealed that mother in law had asked her to uninvite Lizzie from a baby shower to protect her feelings, when Lizzie had actually been looking forward to celebrating with her cousin. The most significant revelation came from our aunt Linda, mother in law's own sister. She contacted Lizzie directly before making any public statements, sharing historical context that helped explain the patterns we've been observing. According to Linda, mother in law had exhibited similar behavior throughout their lives, consistently appointing herself as the protector and advocate for family members experiencing difficulties. Linda described multiple instances from past decades where mother in law had inserted herself into family situations, always under the guise of helping or protecting someone. She shared how mother in law had once convinced their entire extended family to modify holiday celebrations because their brother was allegedly struggling with depression, only to later discover he had never expressed any issues with the traditional celebrations. She detailed how mother in law had interfered in countless family situations over the years, always positioning herself as the compassionate advocate while actually creating or exacerbating problems. This historical context helped us understand that the current situation wasn't simply about Lizzie's infertility or my pregnancy. It was part of a long established pattern of behavior through which mother in law sought attention and control by appointing herself as the protector of vulnerable family members. This realization prompted several family members to share their own past experiences with mother in law's interference, creating a comprehensive picture of how her behavior had affected family dynamics over many years. As these revelations and discussions unfolded, we recognized the need for a structured approach to addressing the situation. My husband and Lizzie arranged a family meeting that included several key family members, though mother in law was not invited to this initial discussion. The purpose was to establish a clear understanding of the patterns we'd observed and develop a unified approach to establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries. During this meeting, we heard additional stories of how mother in law's behavior had affected various family relationships over the years. What emerged was a pattern of mother in law identifying someone's vulnerable moment or personal struggle and then using that situation to position herself as an essential mediator between that person and the rest of the family. She would often exaggerate or misinterpret the person's struggles, creating scenarios that required her intervention and guidance to navigate. The family meeting concluded with a clear consensus that mother in law's behavior required direct intervention if we wanted to maintain healthy family relationships moving forward. Lizzie and my husband, as mother in law's children, took primary responsibility for addressing the situation. They drafted a detailed email to their mother, carefully outlining the problematic patterns in her behavior and their impact on family relationships. The email began by acknowledging mother in law's likely good intentions while firmly addressing how her actions had actually harmed family relationships. They explained how her pattern of using other people's struggles for attention had created distrust and distance within the family. They directly addressed her inappropriate suggestion about my family planning and her subsequent attempts to blame my reaction on postpartum hormones. They detailed how her manipulation of family events and relationships had affected everyone involved, providing specific examples of how her unauthorized advocacy had created unnecessary conflicts and misunderstandings. They explained how her social media posts and public discussions of private family matters had violated trust and boundaries in ways that needed to be addressed. The email concluded with clear requirements for moving forward, included the need for mother in law to seek professional counseling if she wanted to maintain close relationships with her children. They emphasized that this wasn't a punishment, but rather a necessary step towards building healthier family dynamics. Mother in law's initial response to the email followed her established pattern. She sent multiple messages expressing hurt and disappointment, claiming her children were being cruel to her, and suggesting that outside influences had turned them against her. She attempted to contact various family members to gain support for her position, but found that the family's understanding of her behavioral patterns had fundamentally shifted. However, as the days passed and she realized that not only her children but the extended family was united in supporting these boundaries, we began to observe subtle changes in her response. Her social media posts became less frequent and less dramatic. Her attempts to contact family members to plead her case diminished. Most notably, she began to show signs of genuinely reflecting on the feedback she'd received. This shift in mother in law's behavior has given us cautious hope that real change might be possible. While we're maintaining firm boundaries and continuing to document all interactions, we're also remaining open to the possibility that this crisis might lead to healthier family relationships in the long term. I'll provide another update soon as we're still in the midst of navigating these changes. For now, we're focused on maintaining the progress we've made while remaining vigilant about enforcing boundaries and supporting each other through this transition period. Update 3. After several intense days of family discussions and revelations, we've finally begun to see meaningful progress in our situation. The combined effect of family unity and the reality of potentially losing relationships with both of her children appears to have created a genuine breakthrough with mother in law. Following a period of relative silence after receiving our email, mother in law reached out individually to both Lizzie and my husband. Her messages were notably different from her previous communications, lacking the emotional manipulation and defensive tone we'd grown accustomed to. Instead, she expressed a desire to meet with a family therapist, acknowledging that she needed professional guidance to understand and modify her behavior. This request was particularly significant because she had consistently rejected suggestions of therapy in the past, often claiming she was too experienced in life to need professional help. The first therapy session took place yesterday at a local family counseling center. While I remained at home focusing on recovery and caring for our newborn, both Lizzie and my husband attended the session with their mother. According to their detailed account, the session proved remarkably productive, marking what appears to be a turning point in our family dynamics. During the 90-minute session, the therapist created a structured environment where each person could share their perspective without interruption. For the first time, mother-in-law listened without becoming defensive when her children explained how her behavior had affected their lives and relationships. The therapist helped facilitate this discussion by introducing the concept of emotional boundaries and providing specific examples of how well-intentioned help can cross these boundaries in harmful ways. The session began with Lizzie sharing her experience of discovering how her mother had been using her infertility journey in ways that undermined her own coping process. She explained how learning about her mother's behind-the-scenes interventions with family members had made her question every interaction, wondering if people's behavior towards her was genuine or influenced by her mother's interference. The therapist helped mother-in-law understand how these actions had actually isolated Lizzie, made it harder for her to develop authentic relationships with family members. My husband then described his perspective, sharing how he had observed similar patterns in mother-in-law's interactions with both his sister and his own family. He explained how her attempt to influence our family planning decisions and her subsequent effort to dismiss my concerns as hormonal had demonstrated a fundamental lack of respect for our autonomy as adults and parents. The therapist helped frame this discussion in terms of generational boundaries and the transition of parent-child relationships into adult relationships. What made this session particularly effective was the therapist's ability to help mother-in-law recognize how her behavior, despite its ostensibly protective intentions, often served to fulfill her own emotional needs rather than support her children. Through careful questioning and guidance, mother-in-law began to acknowledge that she had been using Lizzie's infertility struggles and my pregnancies as ways to make herself feel important and needed in her children's lives. The most significant breakthrough came when mother-in-law verbally acknowledged several key realizations about her behavior. She admitted that she had no right to suggest we limit our family size and recognized that blaming my legitimate concerns on postpartum hormones was both dismissive and manipulative. She also acknowledged how her social media posts and conversations with extended family about Lizzie's private struggles were inappropriate and harmful. The therapist helped mother-in-law understand how her actions had actually hindered Lizzie's journey toward healing and acceptance. Lizzie was able to explain how her mother's constant highlighting of her struggles had made it harder for her to cope in her own way, and how the unwanted advocacy had made her feel defined solely by her inability to conceive. This revelation seemed to particularly impact mother-in-law as she began to see how her help had actually contributed to her daughter's difficulties rather than alleviating them. Following the session, mother-in-law sent both Lizzie and me separate personalized messages of apology. Unlike her previous emotional appeals, these messages demonstrated genuine reflection and accountability. She took full responsibility for her actions without making excuses or attempting to justify her behavior. She also outlined specific commitments to change her behavior moving forward. These commitments included practical steps such as removing all social media posts about Lizzie's infertility and agreeing to continue regular family therapy sessions. She promised to check with Lizzie before discussing her situation with anyone and committed to respecting our family planning decisions without comment. Most importantly, she acknowledged her need to work on her boundary issues and expressed willingness to engage in individual therapy alongside the family sessions. The most healing aspect of this progress has been mother in law's new understanding of her role in Lizzie's infertility journey. They had a private conversation where Lizzie shared her experience with therapy and personal growth in dealing with her struggles. Mother in law seemed to truly understand, perhaps for the first time, that Lizzie is capable of handling her own emotions and advocating for herself when needed. She committed to stopping her practice of treating Lizzie's infertility as the defining aspect of her life. In terms of my situation, mother in law has demonstrated her commitment to change by giving me appropriate space to focus on my recovery and bonding with the new baby. She sent a thoughtful care package that included practical items for postpartum recovery and newborn care, accompanied by a sincere note acknowledging how inappropriate her hospital visit behavior had been. She expressed genuine joy about her new granddaughter without any reference to family size or future planning. While we're maintaining cautious optimism about these changes, we're also being realistic about the work still needed. Mother in law has agreed to give everyone some space while she continues her therapy sessions, showing an understanding that rebuilding trust will take time and consistent effort. We're approaching this new phase with hope while maintaining clear boundaries and expectations. This experience, though challenging, has ultimately strengthened our family bonds in unexpected ways. Lizzie and I have developed a closer relationship through this ordeal, finding common ground in our experiences with mother in law's behavior and supporting each other's boundaries. My husband and his sister have also strengthened their relationship by standing together against their mother's manipulation and supporting each other through this period of family change. Looking ahead, we're committed to maintaining these healthier family dynamics. Mother in law's willingness to acknowledge her behavior and seek professional help has opened the door for genuine healing and growth. While we're proceeding carefully, we're hopeful that this difficult experience will lead to lasting positive changes in our family relationships. The support and advice I've received through these updates has been invaluable in navigating this situation. Sometimes it takes a crisis to catalyze necessary changes, and in this case, what began as an inappropriate hospital room conversation has led to our family becoming stronger and healthier than before. We're cautiously optimistic about the future while remaining committed to maintaining the boundaries and open communication that have gotten us to this point. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.